Okay, so welcome and thank you for joining us. The title of our session this afternoon, You Built It, but Can You Grow It? And looking maybe at how your business might need a different skill set to expand successfully. Now, I think when I was putting this panel together and thinking about it, very much I was thinking along the lines, myself and Marie, for example, we're not the founders of our business. We acquired it and we're now running it and hopefully driving it into a new future. But very much we can recognize that the skills as a founder to get a business up and running from a visionary perspective, from creativity to being a risk taker, perhaps very different to the skill set that might be needed to run the business as it grows and expands and becomes more complex from a regulatory perspective to compliance to HR and all of that. So very much looking forward to hearing from our illustrious speakers this afternoon. And maybe before we get started, I'd like to start with a little experiment, and I need your input into this, please. So by way of clapping, anybody here ever had an idea, be it a product, a service idea, no matter how trivial or how ridiculous? If you can clap if you've had that idea, please. Okay. Now, can you keep clapping then if single-handedly you've been able to implement that idea without any problems whatsoever? Okay. One. All right then. Well, look, it kind of makes sense. And I suppose, it doesn't mean that your ideas aren't necessarily the right ideas, but I think there can be thousands of reasons why they haven't become a reality. And that can be anything from lack of experience to lack of support or, even poor execution. You can think of the likes of Phil Dunphy of Modern Family with his modern inventions and the difficulty in getting those off the ground. So I think no one person has all the skills, and whether you are a founder or the junior intern in the company, you can often struggle. And you need help, you need investment and training. So as we look at how best to ensure our organizations reset, thrive, we need to look at what those solutions could be. So before I introduce our panelists, yesterday at the Immigration Symposium, I came away with two takeaways. The first one was that there's a key shortage of mushroom pickers in the UK. And secondly, we heard a story which featured a relocating parrot that was afraid of flying. So I hope you leave with some really good insights of a similar nature today. So if I can start then with Brian. So Brian Kelly, Director from Corporate Care Ireland, one of the largest relocation companies in Ireland. Reading his bio, my God, it was about this long. So some of the key highlights, he speaks Japanese, he does sign language, he's a published poet, he has recently written a history book. And whilst you think that's all amazing, when I read that he had once spent an afternoon drinking with Metallica, I thought, how cool, only to learn he had no idea who they were. So I think very much he's a bookworm rather than a heavy metaler. Is that fair to say? Then we have Anna Kavelj from Elite Woodhams, one of Australia's largest relocation company. You started out her career in China more than 16 years ago, and a fluent Chinese speaker, which is absolutely no mean feat. And thank you. She's fresh off a previous panel and has run to join us again today, so thank you for that. Okay, then we have Davian Abershere from Packenpex, CEO. He's held a number of C-suite positions and recently realized a childhood dream when he purchased his VW camper van and can now be found roaming the roads of Europe, exploring with his family. And finally, we have Johanna Lennartson from Lennartson in Sweden. Johanna, she's worked her way from the bottom. She started out as a relocation consultant out in the field, and then hard work and success, she was recently promoted to managing director. And despite being super busy with work and a family, she's found time to also write her first a Scandi crime novel, a Swedish crime novel. So both Johanna and Brian will be looking for editors. So next year there'll be a book for everyone in the audience once they're published, we hope. Okay. And I think, Johanna, you've maybe like to share with us, you've had that 3 a.m. business idea. Do you care to tell the audience what that was?
Yes, we have. A couple of years ago, I was out on a home finding with a family, and we were going to stop for lunch. So I asked them what I wanted to eat, and they said that we have to find a place that serves pizza, because that's all our 6-year-old will eat after 2 months in a hotel. So we stopped for pizza, and everything was good. But when I came back, I talked to Lena about it, and Lena is the founder of our company, so immediately saw that there is a need to fill for those people who live in a hotel or temporary housing for a long time. So together with our health coach, we created a healthy relocation program. And that was not only about what you should or should not eat while staying in temporary accommodation, but it was also about exercise and how do you exercise when you're away from your favorite gym. But also, mindfulness and how do you prepare for a big change that it actually is moving to another country. And we created a program and everything was good, but we never got it off the ground. But perhaps it was the wrong time and we might try later.
Well, we might find a solution for you this evening, so we'll see. So Anna, if I may, I'd like to start with you, please. So when you took over as leader of your company, what were you most worried about? And perhaps in hindsight, what really should you have worried about?
I was probably most worried about my credibility to be that leader.
Okay.
I was thinking, what are other people thinking about me, which in hindsight is a complete waste of time because I have no idea what other people are thinking about me and it's irrelevant anyway. And also I think second to that was the fact that I was definitely one of the youngest in the business, and so I was a little bit concerned, would I have credibility being having a team that's older than me. But as I have come to realize, age really is quite irrelevant and doesn't matter. So yeah, I'd say those were the two things that I was worried about.
Okay. You're lucky, I'm the oldest in my business.
And then what I should have been worried about was probably continuity with the clients, assuring them that everything was fine and the quality assurance would still remain, etc. And then also continuity with the team, because change is obviously disruptive. No one likes change, so to sort of invest your time in the two different arenas to ensure.
And what did you do to maybe put the minds of your clients at rest from a continuity perspective? Did you reach out to them? Was it meetings, phone calls? What did you do?
Yep. So probably more relevant to that was the fact that we merged 2 weeks prior to COVID kicking off, which was fabulous. But one interesting thing that we did was I actually called, the key clients and had a sort of confidential conversation with them that this was going to be happening, so that it didn't come as a big shock, seen on LinkedIn, because that's really important that they were aware and they were comfortable with the situation, and they actually all really appreciated it. So that worked.
It was
really
a good
well.
approach, and for them to hear it from you first.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and Damian, would you have had a similar experience worrying about what others might have thought, or were you different?
Absolutely, no, it was quite the same actually, and I didn't come from sort of the grassroots of the business, and I did never work as a relocation consultant, and I was worried that people would not necessarily see competence and technical skills. But then quickly realized I have a fantastic team who can bring those skills, and my role is to lead the company and develop visions, and I think that really helps them in settling into the role and growing.
Okay, and maybe what kind of things would you have done when you first came on board then, as the CEO, let's say, because you'd previously been in, what kind of talks were you having with your teams?
Well, it's first of all understanding what they do and how they do it, and what works and what doesn't work. And what we really did and do a lot still is what we call the walk the talk. Okay. So we leave the office facilities and we just go for a walk and we talk, and you find totally different discussions. when you do that rather than sitting at the desk and having a report in front of you. And I think the other thing I continuously try to do is really get inputs from outside the industry.
Okay.
So I quite like to attend, non-industry conferences and events, and listening to tech companies, and it's quite inspirational. And you can learn a lot from those discussions.
Yeah, okay, and quite scary as well, listening
Yeah.
to those tech stuff. Okay, thank you. And then Brian, if I can maybe move on to you. In terms of, being the founder of a business to running that, I mean, your experience is you bought into your business rather than finding corporate care. What would you say would be the key differences in terms of skills and goals that might be required to start a business and then those to run and operate it effectively?
Sure, yeah. Well, I guess we're all amongst friends here, so I can make an admission, and that is that my name is Brian, and I'm not an entrepreneur. And I know I'm not, because I know a great one, and she's sitting here near the front, Francine O'Byrne. So this morning, Francine was honoured by Eura for her career-long contribution to the industry. And it happened actually about 30 years ago, at exactly the same time as I was finishing my engineering degree. So I'm just kind of paralleling our stories. And, I know that at the time, we mentioned earlier ideas, and, as an engineering student, you have ideas. But if somebody said to me that, well, why don't you take one of those and create a company and go out and sell it and gain customers, that would have just scared me. It wouldn't have been possible. Mm-hmm. So we have great admiration for the founders of these companies who were the founders of the industry. There's Patrick also in Ireland, and there's somebody in everybody's country who created the industry and managed to grow it. And even if you think of the early days of somebody growing a business like that, they've taken on 10 jobs. They were, you're responsible for operations and finance and sales and marketing and HR. And whereas I took an easier route, I got a job in a multinational, and I specialized. And like, even you think about the early days of somebody hiring their first employee, and overnight you double, the size of your business. So there are a lot of scary moments that we skipped over. Now, on the other hand, by specializing in business development, in my case, I think you're able to come back around and bring something back to the industry at a later stage. So while I wouldn't have been suitable in the early stages of development, Francine and my story and Frank's came together a couple of years back when we were, luckily enough, able to integrate Relocation Bureau into corporate care. And at that stage, the world has changed, the industry has changed. It's now a lot more technical, and the future is going to be a lot different. And hopefully we bring different types of skills that can help us there. And maybe a different attitude and different approach, like Damian says, because we came from outside of this industry. So maybe we're bringing something a little different.
Yeah, and I think it's the same for our case with myself and Marie as well. We've acquired the business from the founder, who is completely different. He hated working with me because I was all about structure and compliance and cutting his wings, and they don't like that. And Johanna, from your perspective, I mean, obviously you kind of joined the company and you've worked your way from the bottom up. When you look at your skill set, how do you think that will now impact in your role in driving the business future?
Yes, well, so no, I'm not the founder, and I think it was quite obvious in my last story about the health relocation program that it's Lena that is the founder and comes with all the great ideas. And I also have had the opportunity to know a lot of founders. I can see a few of them in this room, actually, and it's a bunch of hardworking, strong women, because most of them I know are women, and I really admire the courage that they had when they started their businesses. And I know that they're often the first one in the morning in the office and the last one to leave. But I also think that it takes a certain type of people to work in this industry at all, no matter if you're a relocation consultant or a manager or a founder. And, my partner has, after 15 years of me working in this industry, still not understood why I cannot have long summer holidays like the rest of the Swedes, or leave early on Fridays, or how it can be so urgent that I have to take a call in the evening. But I think that everyone in this room knows exactly how urgent it can be and how stressful it can be working in this global culture with people in a very fragile time of their lives. But then again, he has not felt the joy when a work permit comes through much quicker than he should have, or you see the happiness when a family finds their dream home in a new country, or you meet this guy in the office that is about to move into his first own apartment because he's moving straight from his parents' house. And I think that those are moments that make it all worth it and why we're so passionate about this job. But it's not always a smooth ride because it's a lot of expectations to handle and it's people in a very stressful time of their lives. So I think for a person, responsible and leading the company, you need to have that understanding and to be able to support the consultants when needed.
Okay, great, thank you. And then, Damian, I think very much anytime I'm interviewing for somebody to come and join EER, one thing I say is, I'm looking for somebody to make me redundant. And they kind of look at me, they're not really sure if I'm serious or not. And, for you, what skills do you possess that you thought, would serve you well as a leader? And more, what skills have you been surprised to learn that you actually had and may not have been aware of?
Well, I think, I did expect that sort of being an accountant by trade, that the analytical skill and sort of, being able to read a P&L statement and a balance sheet would help. And it does, it really does, especially if you grow and expand. You need to control the business flow, you need to understand the business model, and, you need to develop it from there in quite a structured way. I also think, as a leader, you have to be a very good listener. And I spend a lot of time talking to customers, to our staff, to business partners, and really try to understand what motivates them, what are they missing, where are the gaps in the service offering, because that's where we need to develop. So those were the skills I did expect I would use. And I'm quite a nerdy, and I quite like technology and playing with tools, and I have to say it's quite fun nowadays. I get to sort of take a challenge and think about how can we solve it differently by applying technology. So I'm quite happy to have a few toys to play with every now and then.
Okay, and that's at home you're playing with these toys?
Sorry?
At home you're playing with these toys
Yeah,
at the
at
end
home,
of the day?
sometimes, just you get off a difficult call and you just need to do something else. So take an idea and you experiment something, or you build something quickly and you see how that goes.
Okay, and what would you have built? Can you give us some examples of
Well,
something you've done?
that's very, it can be little things like, I'm annoyed if I have to do the same thing 10 times manually, I try to find a way to automate it. So you quickly Google if there is any tools that sort of would help you in doing that, or a little script or something that you can sort of click together with technology. Nowadays, it's incredible what is possible with technology, and sometimes those things then develop into bigger ideas and things we can apply on a larger scale.
Okay, but I would imagine to be able to do something like that takes patience and diligence to be able to sit down and teach yourself, if you like, to write script.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I've always liked technology and sort of I've always programmed in Excel in the very early days with VBA and things like that. So I've always liked experimenting a little bit with technology.
Okay, fantastic. And Brian, from your perspective, what has been your experience?
Well, I suppose mine are, like Damian mentioned, kind of specialist skills in a particular area. So it's in business development. And I think we have the luxury in corporate care that we have somebody senior in our company dedicated full-time to business development. And obviously that's been really helpful to us. But you're asking about skills as a leader, and off the panel, my distinguished colleagues are all MDs and CEOs, and I'm not. And that's because we have maybe an unusual setup, but Frank and I, who's sitting here, while we're co-owners of the company, we take specific roles in the business. And it's based on who's going to add what in each role. So I hope I add quite a bit to the business development, but Frank is stronger at driving a business. He's better at leading the team and all that. So Frank is our MD. So even though we're partners, he's up here and I'm off to the side doing business development, but it works really well together. Yeah. But that doesn't just apply to the two of us, it applies to our whole team. And I think this is the difference between the stage of Francine doing all 10 jobs. We have specialists now in every role. And so it applies, you know, we have to pick the skills across the team. And part of understanding your own skills is understanding what you can't do. And a big part of it would be, well, neither of us are exactly enamored with the details. So we have an operations director who's amazing, Niamh. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here, but yeah, we'd be lost without her in her particular role. Neither of us are born accountants, so thankfully we have a finance director. And I think it's just really important that you identify those areas, you put the right people in there, you give them that responsibility, and then you can concentrate on what you're good at. And if everybody's contributing to the business, well, that's really...
Well, I can kind of echo a lot of what you said, because it's the same for Marie and I as co-owners. You know, Marie is the managing director, I'm operations director, and it's because you have very different set of skills. We're the complete opposites. And as I always say, I like to ask what I can do, and Marie likes to tell. So if I ask, she's more than happy to tell me what to do, and it just works perfectly, you know. But I think, as well as leaders, we've read a lot over the last couple of years, and you know, we kind of started out with books like Scaling Up, for example, and one of the key takeaways from those books were, as a business, your marketing and your finance are two of the most important things, and it's back to you.
Actually,
you're the finance guy, you know, so that's great, but we lacked in that.
But on that, before, the reason that the path that Frank and I took into this business, we had a consultancy company, and we were helping companies to scale, and corporate care was our first client, and we liked it so much we bought the business, essentially. But that's exactly what we were finding, is that the key skills that were short in scaling companies were exactly that it was the finance and sales.
Yeah.
And we were probably more helpful to them on finance than the sales, or on sales and finance, but yeah, that was the gap.
Yeah, and I find since we started out with the reading and that, and okay, we've moved very far away from the scaling up, but it was certainly the best start, and taught us a lot, so it was great. And I think probably, Johanna, that takes me on to the next question. You know, Marie, we've just been through an acquisition, and it was our first acquisition, so we had zero experience and knowledge when it came to that. So thankfully we made the decision that we would outsource that so that we could plug the gap. And you know, from your strategic objectives within your company, what gaps would there be in your knowledge of experience, and what have you done to fill those gaps?
Well, we did have a gap that I wasn't aware about until a few months ago. We were hiring for the director of operations role, which was my previous role, so we definitely knew about that gap. And we were trying to find, or I wanted someone that was just like me and had the same experience and the same knowledge. And if you have ever tried to find such a person, it's very difficult. So we found this person that was great in every way, but she didn't have the immigration experience, at least not so much as I do. And as I spend most of my time covering the immigration department and not that much on the relocation department, I thought that the person definitely needed to have some skills about immigration. But then again, I met her a second time because she was really good in every other aspect. And then I realized that she was actually perfect for the role, because the reason why I spend more time in the immigration department is not only because they needed more and the consultants were newer and there was always new regulations and things that we need to update, but it was also that that's my passion. That's where I want to spend more time. And the relocation department had taken care of its own for a long time, not by itself, but not that much care. But I realized that it need that care to grow, obviously. And even if the relocation consultants are very experienced, they need to be taken care of as well. So suddenly it was just clear that she was the perfect candidate that could take on that department and to grow it further.
Okay, good. Because I think, you know, sometimes you can be in danger within a company as well of, because somebody is good in one role, that you think, my God, they're fantastic at this, I'll promote them into another role, and suddenly they don't tend to perform. So, you know, from your experience, I think, is it important, you would say, to go after, you know, willingness and attitude rather than hire for skill?
Yes, I mean, yes, I think so. I mean, some skills can be taught,
Yeah.
but the way you are and the way you act, it's a bit more difficult to change.
And Anna, from your perspective within Elite Woodhams, have you brought in perhaps consultants or hired people to come in and fill the gaps?
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely not the smartest person in my company, and I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah.
I think, yes, obviously you hire for the skill that you need, but I think prior to that, if you are still at the kind of leading your own business stage, it's really daunting to start hiring people. It's like taking that step of, like, it's easy to do the account managers and to hire the consultants. That's easy because that's kind of the bread and butter, operational delivery of your services. But start it, like, I don't work in a big company, so I don't have in-house legal counsel. I don't have HR directors and employee engagement people and, all those sort of other roles that big companies have. So, like you were saying, Brian, you end up being a jack of all trades and a master of none. But there comes a point where it's really important to start, employing the professionals. And in my last session, Daniel from Altair was mentioning the 115 data security questionnaires for compliance or whatever. It's just, you need to start outsourcing, and that's the best way to sort of step into that area, is outsource to the experts, get the legal advice you need to do, get the HR advice you need, get the IT advice, and then once you start to grow and develop, then you can obviously hire your own people and bring them in. And then when we merged, I also had a sort of independent consultant to help with the merger, because unlike your situation, ours was a true merger.
Okay.
And so we had a lot of emotion and history and really heartfelt sort of needs. And so it was another kind of dynamic, I guess, to navigate a merger rather than an acquisition. And so it was really important to have someone that was independent, that could keep me to task with the mammoth amount that had to be done, but also sort of help navigate the emotional side of things, yeah.
And did you find the emotional side of it was perhaps the biggest challenge in it, or were there more?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say so.
So being able, then I suppose having the consultant, did that allow you to maybe step away and not be part of some of those?
It wasn't my emotion. But I think so. And merging a business is a big deal. So it was really helpful to have someone independent to help on that path. Yeah.
But I mean, there is a point, because when you're the founder of a business, you have to be the jack of all trades, because you maybe haven't got the finance to be able to appoint those consultants to come in and do the work for you. So it's a very lonely place to be. Even I sometimes struggle with it. You have to make a lot of decisions where you're not the expert in it, let's say. So it takes time to get from that point, from being the founder and everything, to building up to being able to get the consultant in. But certainly it's beginning to it's made a lot of difference for us as a company, having those consultants to come in and fill those.
But I think there's also, I mean, you don't have to go to the big four accounting firms. There's so many other small businesses who are fantastic at what they do, that you can find in your local city, neighborhood, whatever, that will super expert, really niche at what they do, and it doesn't have to be incredibly expensive.
Yeah. And I think those smaller ones, sometimes there's a better able to become a partner and become invested in you and in the success of your business as well. Have you found that?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely the service levels are higher when you mean more to them. Your business means a lot to them, so they're very willing to go on that journey with you. And they may stay, and you may end up hiring them. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, and Brian, in facing your toughest challenges, okay, in your career, what would you say helps you to get through those?
Going drinking with Metallica. Well, actually, it is actually to, it can be very stressful for all of us, and whether you've founded a business, you've taken over one, all of managing these businesses lead to stressful times. And I think it's to try and get past the stress and then concentrate on solutions to problems. But you need to, like you said, take the emotion out of it. And well, for me, it's just sitting on the back of a motorbike and, going for a ride, clear my head. And it's kind of, for somebody, it could be meditation. That's essentially what that is for me. I think it's really important that you come clear-headed to a solution rather than letting the emotions sway it. And I think that's how I've tried, or we've tried, to get over any issues that we've faced in the business.
You've just come back from a long bike ride in the States, so you must be gung-ho now.
Oh yeah, I'm full of ideas now. Yeah.
There you go, Frank. There'll be loads. And Anna, from your perspective, how do you deal with the challenges? What do you do to step away?
To step away, run.
Run away from the business or just go out for
I
it?
just run. My children are young and they keep me very much on the straight and narrow because they quite frankly don't care about work or the stresses that I'm going through. But actually, I'm also a part of Relocate Asia Pacific, which is other DSPs, and that's super helpful to be able to kind of, not obviously confidential stuff, but just to soundboard things off other DSPs, and that was really helpful during COVID. Eura, all the friends we have here today, that's really helpful just to, because sometimes it's lonely at the top, and my husband may not understand the intricacies of relocation and running a business or whatever, so it's nice to be able to talk to other people. Having a board is really helpful.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And how is your board? What is the consistency of your board?
It's the owners of the two unmerged entities and me, so they're like non-exec directors, but it's really helpful because I've come to realize who has which really an asset, like who's fabulous. So if I go to that one for finance and that one for BD and that one for HR, it's really helpful, and they're very wise and always there to sort of offer a sounding board. It's great. Okay.
And yeah, because we do something similar whereby some of our non-exec board members, we would actually bring them in on projects in the company to help and support. Have you done that as well?
Yes, and one of the board members is, CFO experience from outside of the industry, so that's fantastic. So he brings a lot of, but yes, I have had to. Can't do everything.
Can't do everything, yes. And Damian, from your perspective, in terms of your board, how do they help you in terms of running?
Yeah, well, we also have a board consistent of non-executive directors, and I think it just helps, again, that skill mix, and I think it's one of the most important things when you want to solve challenges, that you don't feel alone, and there is always a bit inside the company or in the board. You have to think about what skills do we need to overcome those challenges, and who can help me in that step, and there's always someone. So we have people from a marketing background, or we have legal people on the board, and that's quite a good combination, and sort of a low hurdle to call for support as well, because you have an existing relationship with them, and you can just call and for support, and sometimes just a 5-minute phone call will solve. Maybe not solve the problem, but it sort of show the way and how you can maybe solve it afterwards.
Someone to talk
quite easily, yeah.
Okay, and Johanna, if you were to give some advice to perhaps an up-and-coming founder or a leader of a business who maybe they're struggling to convert some of their ideas and concepts into reality, what advice would that be?
Yes, I actually asked Lena about this before I left for Spain, as she actually is the founder. And I know that she started the company in 1995 during a financial crisis, and she has told me many times about those first years when she ate a lot of pasta and tomato sauce and had to recycle bottles to be able to go to the movies. So it's not that easy, and you should also, as I talked about in the beginning, that there is a need for something, but there should also be a need for something that someone wants to pay for, so that you make sure to get food on your table. And the second takeaway is plan for administration. It's a lot more administration than you think running a company. Probably 40% of your time will go to administration, and that is non-billable work, so that should definitely be counted in. And the third thing is be prepared for the responsibility that it takes, not only for you and the company, but also for the employees that you have employed. You're responsible for that they are getting food on the table and paying the mortgage and take care of their children. No pressure. But also then remember to have fun and, have that gut feeling. If something feels right and you enjoy doing it, it's the right thing to do.
Okay, and what kind of things are you doing for your employees? Because very much, since COVID, wellness is high up in terms of what we're looking at now for our employees. What are you doing?
Well, I think, as I mentioned before as well, is that, be supported and make sure that they know that you got your back. And I don't want them to be stressed or overwhelmed and not have time for their families. So I think, you really should take care of them. And I think that means a lot for the people working for you, that you really care about them.
Okay, and I think, Damian, that's something that's critical for you. You really believe in your employees.
Absolutely.
That they're key to your business. What are you doing to look after them right now?
Well, I'd hope we do a lot, but yeah, we really believe the employees are key to the success of our business. And we started an initiative 4 or 5 years ago, and we're certified now as a great place to work. And that really, forces us to have a structured approach to it. And we've developed a number of initiatives. And one of my favorites is what we call the pack and relax. So we have, especially for managers, and they work a lot, and it's intensive, and we're living in a time where everything turns faster and faster and faster. So we have a program whereby every 3 years we send people on a mini sabbatical, and we force them to leave the business for a month. And it's amazing what we get in return in terms of engagement and retention, and people come back with so much more energy when they return from such a break.
Okay, and a full switch off for a month.
Yes, and I'm part of that as well. So I turn off my phone I usually manage 3 weeks, and then I sort of get nervous.
Okay, and so if you're going away and you're switching off for those 4 weeks, I mean, from, I suppose, a risk perspective and continuity, who's holding the fort then and worried about things? Suddenly they can't get hold of the CEO. What are they going to do?
Well, they can always get hold of me. So I switch off my emails. I don't switch off the phone. Right?
Okay.
But no, but look, I believe in teams and leadership through teams, and we have great people, and I think if as a CEO you're the only one that can handle a problem, then your company may have a problem in the long run. So I think it is about building structures and building teams where responsibilities can be shared, and we have perfectly capable people who can handle those situations. And if need is, I'm only a WhatsApp away, and that works quite well.
Okay, excellent. It sounds great. And look, all week I think we're hearing about the talent war, the great resignation, and all of that. And certainly it's really, really difficult to find good people, recruit, and all of that. And Brian, kind of, if you're looking at your own business, when it comes to the recruitment side of things, for example, I know we'd like to find somebody. We're totally back in the day-to-day ops at the moment because things are so crazy and so busy. And as leaders, we want to step away from that so we can be more focused on the strategy. When it comes to looking for people, what are you looking for when you go into that interview?
Well, people talk a lot about the difficulty of recruiting. We've had to go through a lot of recruitment recently as businesses ramped up post-COVID. But actually, we've been very successful at doing it ourselves. And part of that is by word of mouth. If you get a good reputation as a place to work, the great place to work idea, well, then you do attract other good people towards you. I would also say that for relocation consultants, we often hire people that are overlooked in the market, which are a lot of our consultants, maybe women mostly in their 40s and 50s. They've probably raised a family, they've put kids through school, they've bought and sold houses, they've lived internationally. These are amazing people whose life skills probably don't come across on a CV maybe for another type of job application, but are ideal for us. And we've hired so many great people. And then they come, it's a little like, do you hire them for their previous skills or what they're capable of doing? And, we've hired recently our president's aide de camp. Okay. So out of the army, we've hired people from all sorts of backgrounds, and it's working extremely well. Now, I would say it's different in trying to hire that management layer that we spoke about, which is so important, and continuing on the business and driving the next generation and succession planning and that. But in general, we'd be pretty happy with our recruitment on those reasons.
Okay, great. Okay, well, look, thank you very much. Perhaps we can open it up to the audience if they have any questions that they would like to ask. To take my glasses off, I can't see the audience otherwise. Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I have a DSP that I'm Danielle from Senegal, West Africa, but I'm American. I started the DSP and we're a small team of local staff, but we're at a growth point where I have to start hiring more expensive people in leadership roles because I can't do everything. Like you were saying, I'm doing a little bit of everything right now. So, but financing is my question. So right now the company belongs to me. I don't have any investors. I don't have bank loans. We've just been operating from the clients, you know, the services that we get, we put a little aside every time so we can do procurement and we're growing that way. But it's a little limiting. So now I'm at a point where I'm trying to make hard decisions about whether I take the risk and bring people on board because I know they can do it. And I'm more confident with the work quality, or I wait until the client signs and then I try to scramble to find someone and train them. Or is there a solution? It's kind of two problems. It's a recruitment HR, and it's also a finance question. And like that growth point, how do you finance? Should I bring an investor on? And like, I've gotten solicited before, and I said no. So maybe I should consider.
Brian, would you like to take that?
Well, I think it's probably a typical problem that any of the founders have probably faced. And you get to a certain point of growth, and there is a chasm literally between how far you can get easily and then how you can become at a size that you can scale. So once you get to a certain point, scaling becomes easy. You have systems in place, you have structures, and it's just, I need two of those people instead of one, and and the system can cope because it's just another entry onto the computer system. And I don't think there is a perfect answer for that. That chasm exists, and some of it might be your appetite for risk. It might be your how much control you want to have and how much you're willing to give up. But I would say don't give away value just for something that's it's something that can be got over with difficulty, but I would say don't give up too much value in bringing in funding if you can, because you've put in all the hard yards in getting it to where it is, and it would be a shame to lose out at that particular hurdle, because once you clear that hurdle, the path could be cleared for you for the future to really dramatically grow.
Could I add one point there? I'd say don't just wander into growth, have a plan for growth.
Okay.
But don't just react to what's happening. Have a plan for your business.
Okay.
That's
Longer
really
term.
It doesn't have to be like really long term, it can be 2 to 3 years, but have a plan for your business. Know where you're going.
Okay.
And then do what you want to do against having a good plan. Don't just wander into it.
Okay.
And you could, in this climate, you could wander into it because we're all under pressure to add people and do more volume and all of that. So you could very much wander into it. And don't let that happen.
Okay.
There is a microphone there if we need to use it for
Okay.
the audience.
Yeah. And I think as well, right now in terms of employees, they're certainly demanding a lot more. When it comes to salary, when it comes to benefits, being able to work from home and things like that. And even if you can look at packages from a remuneration perspective, do it somehow differently. I mean, a lot of the things we're hearing right now as well is that employees, they want purpose, more so than just the job and the money and all of that. So sit and think, what could you offer them that's just not the money aspect of it, but some other things in terms of flexibility or other forms of remuneration as well. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else?
I just
Damian.
just wanted to add
Yes.
something, and I think, Brian, what you said is, I think what is very important is really that when you bring on board additional people, it's thinking about how are you going to split the roles, because when you bring in additional people, you need to delegate, and that's not just delegating tasks, it's delegating responsibility. Because otherwise you're going to stall at a certain point. So I think that's what I see often also when we expand and we talk to companies and in terms of acquisitions, that this delegation, the responsibility really lies with one single person, and that is always sort of a hindrance for growth. So you will need to split responsibility across multiple people if you want to grow and push beyond.
And I think as well, being prepared to maybe give up control as well, you know, because if you bring somebody in to do something and then don't allow them to do it because you won't give that, you're setting them up to fail from the moment they've stepped in the door. So, you know, you have to be really prepared to maybe identify your gaps and bring those people in that can fill those. Yeah. Yes?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So one of the things that I think the panel needs to think about and to share with people more is about the fear of failure. We all fail all the time. If you don't fail, actually you're not moving forward. So I think that it's great that we're talking about the resources and how you might address things and everything else. But one of the big things you've got to address is not being afraid to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And then learning from that and moving forward.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think even personally from, you know, since taking over the business last year and, you know, with this new acquisition, and sometimes we just feel like we're going backwards and kind of failing. And even I think actually it was, you know, Brian that gave me a piece of advice, and he said, look, if you can get to the end of the year after that and be just even on an even keel, we should be very happy that we will have done and achieved that as well. But look, we've had loads of failures definitely along the way, but you got to keep going and fighting the fight, I suppose. But and some of the biggest failures can often be around people and the people that we have hired and maybe not having supported them. And, you know, as a result, we've put people into the wrong job. You know, they've become burnt out and exhausted, they leave and things like that. So it's really hard sometimes to get the people aspect of it right as well. And it just seems to be getting more challenging.
If I could,
Sorry, Anna, the biggest crime is not learning from failure.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're gonna do it. Sorry, Anna.
And I was going to say that I was at a conference last week, and there was a CEO up, and she's in charge of Rolls-Royce R², which is like a digital transformation side of Rolls-Royce. And Rolls-Royce is a 150-year-old business, and how on earth was Rolls-Royce going to stay relevant today? And so they've done this spin-off business, and it's all around agile working and digital data collection, aggregation, et cetera, and she had a really nice analogy of, think of it like an onion, and you're starting in the middle, and you try something, it's like one layer. Did it work? What worked? No, failed. Okay, cool, whatever. Try it again, tweak a little bit more, there's another layer, and there's another layer, and there's another layer. And she was saying that that's exactly how they work, and they have been doing that for a number of years now. And it was quite nice to hear that, because you always see people up on stage and think, oh my gosh, they're all so successful, they've completely nailed it, and you know, we haven't. We're always failing all the time. And it's an iterative process, isn't it? You just try something, didn't work, try it again, tweak it, and go like that. So I thought that was quite a nice analogy.
And I also think, you know, there's definitely a realization now that us as leaders, as we get older, the gap is widening between the really younger generations that are coming into the workforce. And it's something I'm really struggling with. And I think I was in a previous session where they were talking about the old command and control, and that's kind of the school I came out of. So, you know, I need to move away from that, and we need to be more flexible, which we're learning to do slowly, about working from home and flexible hours and all of that, because that is what's important to people. So certainly there's a lot of learning still to be done.
And if on the younger people, so I had someone in my team write a job description recently, and she was like, here you go, have a look at that before I post it. I was like, okay. And so the first half was about EWR and what we can offer you and who we are and why we exist and all this. And then the second half of the job description was what we're looking for in you and the skills that we'd like you to have. And I was like, shouldn't it be the other way around, like what we need and then a bit about us? And she was like, no. If you need to get the right talent, you need to sell the business.
Company.
They need to want to turn up to the interview. You need to sell you as a company and your purpose, etc. And then the kind of skills are secondary. So that was a learning for me.
But they're almost interviewing you when they come.
Yeah.
To say, you know, well, why should I work for you?
Yes, they are.
Okay, anyone else? Yes?
Yeah, so I have a question, and it's in regard to business development. So I suppose taking us as an example as a business, I did all the business development up until now, but as we're growing as a business, we'll need somebody in that position to help with the business development. So I suppose one question is finding that person. Secondly, how do you motivate that question? As a business owner and managing director, you are highly motivated. But a BD executive, how do you motivate them and how do you incentivize them?
Okay, who would like to take that? Damian?
Well, it's a very good question, and I don't think there is a simple answer. I think challenge is effectively, finding the right person, and I think it comes back to what we said earlier on as well, is the values have to fit, and especially in sales, it has to be people who represent your company, so that's probably the sort of the highest demand you can have. So I think what we try is really focus on values and identify people who really match with the company and who we feel we can send out and represent. And then the question of incentives, I don't know whether there is a magic formula. I know sort of, financial incentives is obviously part of it, but I believe, and research has shown, it's not the only incentive. So I think it comes back to purpose and sort of providing a platform to people that they believe in and they can be part of something bigger. And they can contribute to building a company, to create jobs, and that's much more than maybe just a percentage of the revenue you get.
I think those are the important points, because I know business development skills, the technical skills of developing a business, are exactly the same in this relocation industry as any other industry I've worked in, and especially because we spent some time consulting to various different types of company in different industries. The process is the same. So I don't think you should get hung up on the technical details of it. I think there are bigger picture concerns that Damian has outlined that are maybe more important.
Yeah. It's just, sometimes I do question, the thing about that people are looking for purpose. I'm not altogether sure I agree with that, because I think sometimes things do come down to money and remuneration. And we had an interview recently, and oh God, it went so well, and I was ready to give her the job offer there and then, And one of my last questions was, which I'm going to make my first from now on, was, why do you want this job? Or, what made you look? She said, oh, I don't really, she said, but I'm trying to negotiate a pay rise with my current employer. So if I can bring the offer back to him, hopefully I can do that. I had wasted an hour, and I was disappointed and annoyed at myself that I'd wasted so much time. So I would say I'm not altogether sure that right now purpose is necessarily enough for employees. So yeah, anybody else? Any other questions? Yes, Simon?
I have a question, so let me because of acquire or merge companies. How do you manage the kind of cultural challenge of bringing two companies together and trying to sort of merge that culture? How have you managed that?
Okay.
So the first thing is if you really are going to merge and not acquire, you need to find the right person to merge with in the first place. You have to like that other side, because you're going to be working with them. They're going to be a part of your life for some time. So you need to trust them, like them, have equal values, believe in what they believe in, etc., genuinely, because I think if it's just a transactional thing, it's probably going to end in tears. So that's the first thing. Then once you've decided that you do want to merge and the financials make sense and you proceed, then you've got the fun job of integrating two businesses. And invariably, you've got two teams who are going to say, well, when I was at Woodham's, and the elite way was this, and the Woodham's way was that. And so you've got to really set the stage quite early on that was the past. We recognize the past, but we're actually not going to talk in that kind of language. And it is something as simple as the language that we use. We did this. I was really quite clear actually on that point. Like when we went forward, that we're going to put that to bed, because that can become an unwieldy beast. And then another thing that I did was identified two people in each of the legacy businesses who were real kind of proponents of the merger and of the business, and I made them cultural ambassadors. And so once we had defined, what was EWR, what were our values, they were intrinsic in that role. They were then the ones that kind of drove the message forward, and because I'm not going to necessarily hear everything on the ground that's being said, but they were there and they were going to hear that, and they were then my kind of, to drive forward that culture. So that really worked, having these cultural ambassadors.
Oh, I like that idea. That's great.
I think it's interesting what you say about, you have to trust and like and respect those people because they're going to be around. But I think the same is true if you acquire a company because, again, we mentioned Francine, but, we have to trust and like and respect what Francine has done because her legacy lives on in that. So even if that person is not still there, their team has grown up in a particular way and the ways of doing business. So the two cultures of the companies must mirror each other, or else it won't be successful, whether it's an acquisition or a merger. But I think we would have had a similar effect without the ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just come in and bulldoze a situation. You're not going to have a team to work for.
And what about you, Damian? I mean, you've made acquisitions in your time. How have you done the two?
Well, very similar, and we actually use the word ambassador as well. So we always have a Pack and Pex ambassador that we bring in and sort of try to transfer part of the spirit. But the other thing is we always really first try to observe and understand and fully understand what made this company really successful. And there's examples where we've actually taken things from the units that we acquired back to our other businesses. And I think the worst, in my opinion, you can do is just come in and say, well, this is how we're going to work as of today, and throw everything out that has actually made the company grow. So, be respectful of the legacy and sort of work on that basis.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anyone else before we wrap up? Yes, Francine.
Sorry, can we get a microphone for Francine, please?
Great, thank you. Just here in the front.
Just to add, in terms of the emergence of companies that might be of slightly different cultures, that was one of the things that I felt was very important when I did make a decision on the company that I wanted to enter negotiations with. And I think Anna said you like them. They have the similar values to you, and your businesses are valued outside, in the industry as well, and that's very important. But the other thing looking forward in terms of your own teams and that, to them it should look like, and you should explain to them, this is development of your company. You are part of a team that's going to grow, and you have a successful company coming in to do that and help. And it's a new step, it's a new generation, and I think that's important to bear in mind.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, then we will wrap up. So just to say thank you so much to my panelists. Really appreciated Brian, Anna, Damian, and Johanna. Thank you.